Well, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. I always like to start with that because I believe that that is foundational to the work that we do here in Northeast Louisiana. I would also like to thank Deron Talley and his team members, that is Dylan Young and Aaron Davenport, for helping to organize this event. And so if you would help me give them a round of applause, I would greatly appreciate that. I would also like to thank those of my team who are out in the foyer area and those who are in here for being here. I also like to appreciate all of the panelists and the guest speaker, featured speaker, Tanja Miles, for being here, and you, ladies and gentlemen, because you could have been anywhere else this morning, but you chose to be here. And just know that I am thankful and I'm appreciative of your time and of your energy and what it is that you come to receive and share. For just a little while, I just want to talk from the subject, reviving the soul of America, my new future. Reviving the soul of America, my new future. You might be asking, what do you mean by reviving the soul of America? I just want to state from the outset that I believe America is the greatest nation in the world. I also believe that America's promises gives hope to the hopeless, to the lonely, and to the least and the lost. But I also recognize that America's history, and we got to be honest about it, is conflictual. It offers promises and hope on one hand, and then provides detrimental effects on the other. And in order to solve a problem, ladies and gentlemen, you must first admit that you have one. And then you must soldier through to the end. And when I think about America, the colonial period, this is part of the context. You had men and women fleeing something. You had others who were wanting to get wealthy. And then you had others who were enslaved. And then you had a set of structured relationships, cultural norms and folkways, and everything in between developing to establish and reinforce what the colonies needed to get rich and for the wealthy to be protected. And then there was a Declaration of Independence, where it was stated that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. I believe that, ladies and gentlemen. How about you? I believe that we are endowed with inalienable rights. But while some had those rights, others didn't. That's the conflictual nature of America. But then we had a Revolutionary War. Men and some women and blacks and whites, rich and poor, fought to throw off the monarchy and the wealthy elites in Europe to establish the United States of America. And while all of those significant ideals and all that heroic work took place in Philadelphia, Constitution written, significant ideals that I believe in, but too many didn't have an opportunity to experience. Not only African Americans, the majority, because we had some wealthy African Americans, some enslavers who were African American. We also had a lot of poor whites who didn't get an opportunity to realize then and now the American dream. So it's not so much about race entirely, because how many know that race is a political construct that has no reality in reality? God created one race, and it's the human race. So the question is, how did we get the concept and what purpose did it serve? I share with you the founding, and I share with you the justification that people had to use in order to structure relationships, and how norms and everything else had to be created in order to continue and perpetuate the things that we experienced then and we experience now. But again, it's the ideals of America that's so hopeful, so significant. But on the other hand, it's the conflictual nature of America that's creating the challenges. So we have to deal with both simultaneously. And I'm hearing echoing in my ears a quote by Albert Einstein. He once said that you can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. That you cannot solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. What he was essentially saying is that if you're trying to transform something, you've got to get outside of the box of that something. Because if you stay within it, all you would do is perpetuate and blame and continue to have the same old thing and the same old thing and the same old thing. And ladies and gentlemen, if you think about our nation, if you think about our public policies, if you think about all the promises, all the legislation that's passed, and look at the number of sick, the addicted, the mentally ill, what do you see? People trying to solve the problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. I believe we need innovation. We need to get outside of the problem in order to transform the brokenness and the sickness that we see in our neighborhoods, in our homes, in our state, in our nation, and yes, our world. So again, ladies and gentlemen, the ideals of America is what we hope for. Because as I look at the program, it says, using faith to reduce fear, my new future. And how ironic that when you look at the definition of faith, it simply means it's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. What is the substance of America? It's its ideals. It's the Declaration of Independence. It's the Constitution of America. That's the substance. What's the evidence? When you factor in the hypocrisy and the challenges, you see success on one hand and brokenness on another. You see greed on one hand and poverty on another. You see hope on one hand, despair on another. And then you see Republicans against Democrats, whites against blacks, poor against the rich, the North against the South. But those are smoke screens. We've got to get at the fundamental substance of what's creating the ailments. And as I said to you, that you cannot solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. So public policies in and of itself is not sufficient. Prayer in and of itself is not sufficient, even though it changes things. What do we need then? We need reconciliation of the truth. We need to be able to admit that we have significant ideals, but we also have significant challenges. And it's not the ideals that's the problem. It's the people trying to interpret the ideals and being succumbed to greed and fear. What drives fear? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll submit to you that it's driven on multiple levels. On one level, it's significant and unrealistic expectation that somebody will do you something based on some irrationality or some false attribution based on what you have done to the other. And when you have done stuff for so long and you know it's not right, you have to objectify the other in order to do it to them. Because if you perceive the other as your brother and as your sister, it's impossible for you to do them harm. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't hurt what you love. You only hurt what you objectify and you don't know and that you misunderstand. And that you falsely attribute values and norms to that's based on your own insecurities and fears and what others told you about them. And I will submit to you that that's the justification from the very beginning until now. It's because we don't fully understand the sick, the mentally ill, the addicted. That's why we can pass them when they're holding a sign out. That's why we can cut their funding every year. That's why we can blame them for their problems. That's why we can incarcerate them, because it's their problem. We don't fail to understand that there are significant antecedents to the causes of what we see today. And I gave you a historical context to frame the rest of my conversation. And if you think about why we continue to have the same thing happen in America every generation since the founding of our country, it is because we have the same set of beliefs. We have the same set of public policies. We have the same types of interactions. We have the same type of enforcement of putting people in positions to support others and not support others. Because how many know, ladies and gentlemen, that if you really want to understand the problems of people, what makes them sick in their minds and in their bodies, what makes them commit suicide, what makes them turn to opioids and other illicit drugs, most of that is driven by 80% social factors. Only about 20% can be attributed to the person. About 80% of what makes people sick in their minds and in their bodies can be attributed to social factors, such as problems in their homes, broken relationships, poor schools, lack of jobs and opportunities, abuse and neglect, not feeling you're wanted and welcome, not having a supportive social network, feeling that you're isolated and all alone. How many have been there? You know what it's like. And if you didn't have the dogged determination of somebody in your life or the belief that things could get better, where would you be now? I submit to you, without hope and without having somebody in your life or believing that somebody's in your life, that you'll have a needle in your vein. You'll be contemplating suicide. You'll have sickness in your body and all manner of things happening. And everywhere you go, brokenness will follow, because hurt people hurt people. Broken organization and hurt organizations hurt people. Broken families hurt people. Broken nations hurt people. And if you look around at all the brokenness, you would have to bear witness that there's a lot of hurt and brokenness in the world, because those who are in charge and those who are responsible for leading are hurting themselves, because they are part of the culture that they're also trying to make sense of. And if you don't have proper perspective and understanding, through ignorance and or intention, you will perpetuate the trauma and the challenges that you've inherited, and you will create a set of narratives and realities for generations to come. Now, if you allow me, let me go inside the body. Where does all this trauma and all this experience reside? Things can happen to you externally, but where does it reside? I submit to you that it resides in your body, resides in your nervous system. And I will say this, and I know that there's been some contention using the word God, and I recognize what the faith partnership is for those who are watching and those who are here and those who will see this a little later. You understand what my role is as the appointed authority here in Northeast Louisiana and what I do. But this is about science and the like, but I cannot not use the word God. God created us in such a way that the body naturally seeks to protect itself. And encoded in our DNA and encoded in our neurophysiology, every cell seeks to protect itself. So if the body perceives itself at risk, it will fight something. It'll want to flee something, or it'll want to freeze or disassociate because the issues are so traumatic. And ladies and gentlemen, if that happens and it's part of your neurophysiology, your body has a tendency of, without you even being aware of it, scanning this environment, trying to anticipate problems. And if the body feels like it's out of control and fearful, it will allow you to feel certain type of ways. There will be a emitting of neurochemicals such as cortisol and epinephrine and adrenaline in the body, so that the body can naturally seek to protect itself. And if that and those neurochemicals are not enough. Those neurochemicals constricts the blood vessel. It makes the heart pump a lot faster. It affects the kidneys and the liver. And when you think about certain disease states based on repetitive and chronic trauma, and think about the disproportionality of certain individuals with hypertension and diabetes and lupus and inflammatory diseases, you can understand just by not being able to deal with and having to deal with the significant context that I've showed you and shared with you, but have your body constantly fighting something, fleeing something, and this is associating from something. And how many know that there's a correlation between your physiology and your mental makeup? The mind is a body and it's a muscle. It's part of the physiology. Mind and body goes together. If you are depressed because you can't afford your light bill or your rent, you don't know where you're going to be in life. You're concerned about being bullied or picked on and feel less than. And that will make you depressed, which means that your body will naturally create or stop a set of neurochemicals. And you will start to feel very similarly to where you would feel if your body was associated with fighting something or fleeing something. It's the same type of emotion, it's the same type of route that the neurochemical system runs. And so you can have all the psychotropic medications in the world, but if you don't deal with those external factors that also are perpetuating your need to be depressed, because I'll submit to you, if you can't take care of yourself, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be depressed before time. I don't care how much medicine you're taking for depression. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have diabetes, stop taking your insulin, and I guarantee you, you'll start to hallucinate. And your therapist won't be able to tell whether or not it's because you don't have insulin, or if you're actually having a psychotic break due to something you haven't been able to metabolize. So what I'm saying is that there's a mind and there's a body connection based on context and social driving. Now, I'd be remiss to say at a faith conference that the human being is only made up of mind and body. We also know that the human being is made up of spirit. Well, God gave all of its creation a purpose and a function. Ladies and gentlemen, what's your purpose and what's your function? I have 4 little children, and well, some of them are grown now, but y'all may remember conjunction, junction. What's your function? What is your purpose, ladies and gentlemen? What's your function? If your purpose and your function is not aligned with your gifts and talents and your aspirations that God has shown you, you'll develop cognitive dissonance. You'll become frustrated and disillusioned with the world, never satisfied, because you believe that there's something greater for you to do, but you haven't been able to get there and realize it. You recognize that you didn't have all the social support, the family supports needed to help you do the things in which you were gifted to do. You recognize that the school systems failed you, communities failed you, public policies failed you, not having access to what you need failed you. And you begin to grow more and more disillusioned and insular. And then you'll develop this hole in the soul, this emptiness. And when that emptiness comes, ladies and gentlemen, you're susceptible to doing any and everything. You'll lose your mind. You'll try cocaine. You'll try methamphetamine. You'll try any number of things to try to pacify that uncomfortableness that you feel in your body. There's a natural tendency and longing to be whole. That's the way God created us, to be whole. But if we are not whole, then Why is it that we continue to perpetuate siloed solutions and poor public policies and promote turfism? Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that created it. We cannot solve a problem with the latest idea here and the latest idea there. We cannot solve a problem just thinking that this is only a mental health issue when this is also a park and recreations issue. It's a healthcare issue. It's an educational issue. It's a family issue. It's a faith issue. But yet we have people fighting over the isms and the issues to protect what they have. Republicans fighting against the Democrats, the rich against the poor, the whites against the blacks, the North against the South, the East against the West. Why is that? That is because we don't have a vision that we can all gravitate towards. Imagine, if you will, an America. If y'all would just walk with me for a second. Imagine an America where we looked at each individual as a true child of God. Imagine if we had the same empathy for others that we would want others to have for us. Imagine a nation where we are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Not some, but all. Isn't that what our Constitution is all about? So, what is the substance we're hoping for? What is the evidence that's unseen? It's the ideals that are unseen that need to become manifest. We need to be who we say we are in order to have what we say we want. If we don't, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue to perpetuate the same thing over and over and over again. And how many know that that is definitely the definition of insanity? And we've been insane as a nation for hundreds of years. Now it's time for us to grab our nation and say to our nation, enough is enough. It is to say to our nation and our political apparatus, enough is enough. It is time for us to say to all of our various constituencies and groups, enough is enough. We must be about and be our brother's keeper. We must be about what we profess in order for us to be the shining nation on a hill. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't become what we have professed to be, you will no longer exist to be what we hope to be. And it's my desire that we become what we can be, because the people that we serve need us to be all that we can be. They need us to work across the various isms and work together in order to create the infrastructure necessary for them to have a shaken opportunity. And this is what we're after. And I thank you all for being here today. And with your help and your challenge, your passion, your conviction, we can get there. How many believe we can get there? God bless you, and may He forever keep you. Charlie.